Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of Just One More, and the journey we are on together to break the stigma surrounding mental health. This month I really want to focus on inner critics. I want to look at where they come from, and if we can do anything or share anything to make the relationship with our critics more constructive, more beneficial for all parties involved. But first, more importantly, how are you? How are you really? Have you eaten? Have you drank? Have you done something nice just for yourself? This is important. Use this time to check in on yourself. If you're not going to do it for you, do it for me. Check in on yourself. Unlike usual episodes, today is going to be a bit different. There's no real statistical facts on inner critics, as it's more of a symptom of mental illness rather than an illness on its own. It can be caused by depression, anxiety, and there are people who don't have depression and anxiety that still have inner critics. Now, similar to anxiety, everybody has a critical side and a thought path, which we can use to benefit us. This includes when we're working on something, a project at work, or a song, or a poem. You know, you always look back and you reflect, what could I have done differently, what could I have done better? And that's healthy, that's really good. Using that kind of critical thought process is going to help us perfect what we want to do and achieve what we want to do, what we were required to do at the start. Perfectly normal thought process. I'll go on to what's not in a little bit. But one interesting fact I did find while I was doing a bit of research, and it's a general fact, not so much within a critics, however I think it will link in, and it was taken from MatthewTriedstetter.com. The average person has between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts per day. At least 80% of those thoughts are negative. 80% are negative. That's a scary thought in itself. That's a very negative thought in itself. Considering what we go on and do in our day-to-day, work, social time, rest, is that 80% of negative thoughts conscious thoughts? So this has got me kind of in a bit of a reflection spiral. I would say that a lot of my thoughts can be negative. Not all of these thoughts I have, I don't think they're conscious. I think sometimes I just revert back to what I know, what feels comfortable, which might not necessarily always be right. It does highlight to me, however, how mean we actually are to ourselves. How nasty can we be to ourselves? And therefore, inner critics are born. However, when these critics that I keep referring to, the inner critics, start turning extremely negative, feeding off those negative thoughts, telling us about them, that can start to affect our daily moods. It can also affect our decisions. I have two, and they can be very challenging. They are based off figures of my past, and when I am in a particularly low mood or anxious, these two critics can lead me further down a path into depression or anxiety. And it is no secret that when my two are fully active, I do struggle with things like the way I look. I don't feel like I fit in. I generally become really uncomfortable. I'll start feeling uncomfortable in my clothes, no matter what I'm wearing. And then I'll start going extreme questions. So it's gone from silly things like this t-shirt feels a bit to questions where I question my worth. Am I good enough? Am I good enough for my partner? Am I good enough for my friends? Now, you get the picture, and I think you can kind of see the dots here, that the inner critics start pulling me into depression and anxiety. They leave me on spirals of self-doubt, and they do leave me at depression's door. They are very tricky to manage at times, 100%. And it is important to know that although they are inner critics, they are there. There was another interesting thought process I had. I read a little fact on there, not a fact, just something on the internet which kind of confused me a bit. Social media. So social media can be a tool to help and encourage your inner critic in a negative way. For example, comparing yourself to people you see on social media can lead to negative comparisons, which can lead to thoughts like I am ugly, I don't fit in, compared to whoever you're looking at. And I'll be honest, I have had these thoughts before when I've been on other people's social medias. The list does go on. Our current lives are on social media. Take me for example. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Discord, Twitch. All of these sites have multiple interactions. Not all of the interactions I have on these sites are purely positive, and I am on these sites a lot to promote things like this podcast and mental health in general. However, it got me thinking, that point I'm on trying to promote mental health, so are others. So we can use social media to look out for support groups, for people like us, for people who have similar beliefs, similar goals, and we can work as a collective towards those goals. Having more people talking breaks that stigma and helps. So use social media positively. So what can we do about inner critics? What can we do to either stop the critics from being so negative or affecting our daily lives? Everywhere you go, counsellors, therapists, internet, first stop, acknowledgement. You need to acknowledge they're there. Most, not all, just to clarify, not all of them, most will be born from our childhood. There'll be an influential figure in our childhood. And we need to acknowledge that they are there. That somebody is saying negative things in our head that's not actually our thought process. Somebody else is there. At one point in time, this figure could have been there to guide or protect us. And over time, they've developed into a negative because they've been pushed away. Maybe they weren't required. We didn't need protection. So our inner critic all of a sudden was not required. So therefore, they're now pushing to be required. To acknowledge your inner critic might help resolve any thoughts, any memories, any feelings that are hidden, that are causing negative thoughts anyway. I will stress though, when doing any work with inner critics, I recommend therapists, counsellors, just to keep you safe. They're unbiased, they can help pick out what's going on and guide you through this process. I believe it's very important to have the right tools at our disposal when confronting any part of mental health. The next step, after we've acknowledged that these people, person, whatever your inner critic is there, is to change the narrative of the critic. Now this takes work. Can we go and channel that critic and make them into a positive influence? In all honesty, it does work. However, I find it difficult to do when I'm in a low mood. Working at this can provide a level of inner peace for both you and the critic, which you will find comforting and you will find helpful. This does take work and patience. You're not going to solve it in one go. It takes time. And that's okay. Everything's okay. I think one really important thing to note here is you'll have good days and you'll have bad days when you're working on changing narratives. And that's okay. It is important not to be disheartened. Don't think it's not working because it didn't work after number one. Keep at it. It really, really will help, and it will help channel more of the negative thoughts and acknowledge the fact some of these thoughts aren't actually your thoughts. It's something else that's external that's affecting you from childhood or from a trauma. So finally, try practicing self-compassion. Tell yourself you look good in those clothes and that you actually did that activity well. Or you give it your best shot, 'cause sometimes that's all you can do. Give it your best shot. That is well more than enough. Yeah? It is important. You know you've done your best. Well, that's good. That's great. That's what we're after. Being kind to yourself will combat any negativity, and inner critics will also be combated. With practice, it gets easier. One of the biggest things people struggle with, me included, is being kind to yourself, caring for yourself. Yet the more we become comfortable with ourselves, the easier it's going to be. And again, I'm guilty of that too. We just need to keep working at it. The important thing is that we're making strides, we're pushing to try and help, and within a critics, we start changing their narrative. So I want to thank you for listening to this episode, and thank you for being you. Keep talking about mental health. It's the only way we're going to break this stigma and get through it all together. No one is more important than yourself, and nobody is. Please take care of you. You matter. You are important. You are loved. And I will catch you all in the next episode. Thank you so much.